Welcome to Thursday. It's the 23rd day of October, 2025. Your Day Weather Podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at WyomingAdvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Well, we're going to be looking at some more beautiful autumn weather. But we have that little low moving across Utah and Colorado today, but also a big high that is acting like a big umbrella. Look at that photo. That's what you call a Chamber of Commerce day across many areas of the Intermountain West. Almost no wind. Beautiful colors on the cottonwoods, a deep blue sky. I think a lot of folks enjoyed yesterday, and for the most part, you're really going to enjoy today and tomorrow as well before things change up over the weekend. We've got that small system that will be passing through the Great Basin, through Colorado, into Kansas and Oklahoma here over the next 24 to 48 hours. So there will be some weather there. Outside of that area, just gorgeous Chamber of Commerce weather. That Pacific jet stream crashes into the Pacific Northwest coast this weekend. And then as we've been showing you all week, and going back to late last week, still we have question marks on what ends up happening with all this jet stream energy. There's just so much jet stream energy that you have to be somewhat suspicious on some of the model solutions. And again, that's showing again today. But we do have better model agreement, but we also have another outlier, which also leads to lower confidence as we get into the early parts of next week. Another wonderful shot there of Comet Lemon as it got to its closest approach. This from the base of Casper Mountain. A lot of detail there in the tail, and wow, some great photos. And here's another one. If you didn't even if you didn't have a telescope, you were able to spot Comet Lemon, and it may be viewable here for a little bit longer before it continues to move away. Another great shot there from Lucerne. Life is good. Dog's happy. Chickens are happy. The wind isn't blowing. I mean, life is good when we've got all those things coming our way. Another life is good photo there out of Leadville of some fresh snow on the mountains and color in the sky. And then great shot there at Treasure Mountain near Crested Butte, Colorado. Great photo of a lenticular over the Grand Teton. You see the snow piling up there on the Tetons, and they're going to be getting more here soon. What's better than a lenticular cloud over the Grand Teton on the east side? A photo taken from the east side of the Tetons. A lenticular photo on the west side of the Tetons. This one probably taken just a little bit later or earlier with 3 lenticular clouds over the highest peaks there of the Tetons. Beautiful shot there of the moisture coming there out of Round Valley, California into the Sierras with that low pressure system that we've been showing you coming in off the Pacific and inland. And that's also thrown some mid and high level moisture into Arizona out ahead of it. And that moisture will result in showers and some thunderstorms in some areas. And you can see there's the upper level low that's been meandering off the west coast. It's picked up moisture and is now going to just slowly do this over the course of the next 24 to 48 hours. Here's the strong jet stream winds approaching the Pacific Northwest coast with that low up here in the Gulf of Alaska. So as we go through today, we'll see that system move into the Great Basin, then slowly eastward. And by noon Saturday, this is noon today, noon Mountain Time Saturday, it begins to head east. And there you can see we've got that pattern change going on across the Gulf of Alaska and the North Pacific. It's pretty straightforward on what's going to happen here over the next 3 days. Continued nice weather, exception underneath that low pressure system. Although the Pacific Northwest, Seattle and Portland and Vancouver all will be into the rain and the wind and the colder weather with that front coming into the Pacific Northwest. When we take a look at what will happen between now and Saturday morning, there's your precipitation with the low across the south. By Friday night and Saturday morning, the rain going from Northern California to British Columbia. But if you're outside of those areas, there's nothing going on. A nice clear patch of weather going on right there. So we'll step into the longer term and we'll continue to show you the difference in the modeling. Here's the European model by noon Mountain Time on Monday. It's showing that big high acting like a very stout offensive line, and the linebackers just can't get through. The defensive ends trying to blitz, trying to push into this high are having a hard time. But as we showed you before, when you start to move these strong jet stream winds into the continent, with the mountain ranges, all of them, the big mountain ranges that the upper level winds are going to encounter, it's not really possible to have flow this straight. There's going to be some curvature in the flow somewhere here along the flow. So the European model is smoothing things out, and the models will do this. They'll smooth out things, and that's something that I think is probably going to cause an error later. Nonetheless, we have the strong jet stream wind punching through into the Rockies, mainly during the day Sunday into early Monday. That'll bring cold, moist Pacific air into the northern Rockies. Very strong jet stream winds racing across the area, then hitting the big high and the omega pattern. Now down here, we're going to talk about this later. Probably we'll spend some time on this tomorrow. This is going to be Hurricane Melissa. This is going to be a massive hurricane, possibly affecting part of the Caribbean, Cuba, Jamaica, those areas later on. We'll spend some time on that tomorrow. So this is the European model. This is the AI version. Notice the AI version's got a little more curvature in the flow here, a little bit more in the way of ripples along here, but again, probably too straight. Probably too straight. So when we take a look at the other models, they're basically saying the same thing. With the GFS model, maybe a little bit slower and not as far south with the push. The UK Met, it's got more curvature, but it's nothing like what we showed you earlier because of that block. So the story is basically the same, but these little changes in details could mean a big difference in what really happens, especially something maybe happening east of the divide, depending on what goes on. And we're far enough out here that there's still going to be some back and forth between the modeling. And we showed you that the UK Met earlier in this week was the outlier, going against the grain. Well, we've got another model going against the grain today, and that's the Canadian model. For the same time Monday, notice the flow is not nearly as straight. It's got some curvature right here. Still has the blocking high, but it also is saying, no, we're going to curve the flow a little bit. When you curve the flow with the Coriolis effects of the curvature of the Earth and what happens with the Coriolis, then things begin to spin up in the atmosphere. We get something that's called vorticity, and the curvature of the flow creates weather eventually later on. So the Canadian is a lot different than its counterpart. So here we go with another outlier. Not saying the Canadian model is going to be correct, but what it does is it throws a wrench into your confidence. It really decreases your confidence in the forecast. And I'm mainly talking about the forecast Sunday through Tuesday, because look what the Canadian does by Wednesday of next week. Oh boy, there you have yourself a classic Central Plains upslope storm, deep storm system, which would cause a lot of weather. You'd have severe weather here. You'd have snow on the backside of the system. You have a remarkably different outcome. If you were to have only one model, and it was the Canadian model, and you didn't have the other models to compare it with, the forecast would be vastly different, or it could be vastly wrong, or vastly correct, beating the other models. I don't know. We'll see. I'm just showing this to you for entertainment purposes only, to show you what I see and show you how things get complicated past 5 days in any weather situation, but especially when you're changing seasons. And there's your Hurricane Melissa that's going to go on later. So there's a really big contrast between that solution. This is for the same time. Canadian, European. They're not even, I mean, there's some similarities, but wow, there's a huge difference between what would really happen with the weather. And again, models are just a tool. They're trying to guesstimate what's going to happen in the future with the atmosphere, but we're less than a week away and we still have big differences. And these big differences will impact what will happen longer term, because what happens with early next week's weather affects what could happen around Halloween or just after. So that leads to extremely low confidence when we start talking about a 7 or 10 or 15-day forecast. The European model, if we take it for, let's say, the guidepost of precipitation, this is what the second wave will do from Saturday through Wednesday morning. So you can see the heaviest moisture along and west of the Cascades, a little bit less moisture east of the Cascades. But again, this is going to be a good shot of snow for the northern Rockies and the higher elevations. And then we've got some showers along the Interstate 80 corridor, then more widespread showers out into the plains. But we also have kind of a downsloping situation elsewhere, as it'll be the higher terrain that's going to fare better with not only rain, but higher elevation snow chances. Could see significant snow again in Wyoming's western mountains, maybe the high Uintas, and then into the higher mountains of Montana and Idaho there. And then you can see the Cascades doing well. So stay tuned. Should be interesting. We'll see what tomorrow brings.